There are a lot of Dragon Ball fans out there that tend to not like Dragon Ball Daima, even though the past few episodes have been some of the best content that we have gotten out of Dragon Ball in quite some time. Welcome back to Nerdstorm Entertainment, everybody. If this is your first time here, I am Nerdstorm, back with another video, and today we are going to be discussing Dragon Ball Daima episodes 6 through 12. Yes, this is going to be a collective of those episodes because I have missed a few reviews, and I do apologize about that. I had a lot of family stuff going on. But with that being said, before we get into this breakdown of these past few episodes, these amazing episodes, mind you, be sure to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to receive notifications so that way you know every time I happen to upload a new video. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into this breakdown of episodes 6 through 12. So one of the craziest things that I actually noticed was a lot of the lore from older Dragon Ball interviews and whatnot with Akira Toriyama, where he's essentially breaking down how the Dragon Ball world works. And a lot of this content was not in the manga, so we're getting a lot of this stuff within Dragon Ball Daima, as a lot of us know already. So one of the first things was that Glens are born from the 5 Glen trees once every few centuries. And we'll get into a little bit of that later, but I really like that he's bringing in a lot of this Kaioshin lore that we've kind of already knew about for a while, but wasn't in the manga, wasn't in the anime. It was just discussed with the hardcore fans. So we also learned that Shin, Dagetsu, and Arensu were all born from the same tree. And technically Shin and Dagetsu are about 216 years apart, with Shin being the older brother. And those that are born of the same Glen tree technically consider themselves siblings. And though they consider themselves siblings, Glens don't traditionally have genders. And then we also find out that Kibito wasn't actually born of the same tree as Shin. So whether or not that's going to be important later in the future, you know, it's yet to be seen, but we shall see, essentially. We also learned that Dagetsu stayed in the demon realm instead of leaving with the other Glens because he is very ambitious and didn't get along with the other Glens. And the Rensu, their sister, also chose to do something very similar as far as staying in the demon realm, with their ambition being very high, plus she's a mad scientist. So we're learning about a lot of the things, like I said earlier, that we've gotten with Akira Toriyama in interviews and whatnot. And hopefully we actually get the name that we've known a lot of these Kaioshins as for quite some time, the ones that exist within the demon world. And again, their names are Makaioshin, so Demon Supreme Kais, essentially. We also noticed in these earlier episodes that Glorio is actually working for Arensu. You tend to see him throughout these past few episodes actually using the device to sit there and talk to Arensu, who's got her own things going on in the background. And as we've seen throughout this entire show, Shin is still curious about Glorio, and he ends up asking Glorio while everybody's asleep at one point why he wants to go after Goma. And Glorio simply states that it's simply because he's an evil person who makes other Majins suffer. During the same instance, we actually also get to see Glorio and Goku spar, in which Goku shows Glorio that he really doesn't stand a chance against him, because Glorio was kind of pig-headed, thinking that Goku, being a kid, or you know, just being an adult in a kid's body, is not really that strong. The kind of the same mindset that Goma had when he turned them into kids. But obviously Glorio got humbled. After all that, we get to see Bulma working on the ship that Shin used to come to the real world, if you will, and it ends up breaking down. And then it's at that point that Hybis actually arrives on the lookout to retrieve the rest of the crew. Back in the demon world, Pansy wonders how Goku is actually an adult and how he raises kids, which Goku replies that he wasn't really involved. And I know at the time this episode came out, a lot of people were going in on Goku like, ha, we knew it, you were a bad dad. But again, this does not mean that Goku is a bad dad. He just wasn't involved that much. And as I've stated before, and I'm probably going to make an actual YouTube video about it, but I've already made a TikTok about it. So if you haven't checked me out on TikTok, please check me out on TikTok. That's at Nerdstorm92 on TikTok. But if you actually do do the math and actually see exactly all the times that Goku spent with his family and his kids, the only time that he wasn't there was when he was dead. So the 1 year that he was dead after fighting Raditz, and then the 7 years between the Cell Saga and the Buu Saga. Outside of that, he is home. He might not necessarily be an active father watching over his children, but he is there. He's present. There's a difference between being present and being involved, if you will. More than likely, Goku wasn't there changing Pampers and whatnot. But again, people read too much into things and like to ride hype trains about Goku being a bad dad just because they want to be included in the fun, if you will, not realizing that they look stupid for following trends that don't make sense. It's at that point that Pansy notices that they are being followed by the Gendarmerie and comes to the conclusion that it was because they tracked her collar. She also tells the group that it's impossible for the collar to come off because they were wondering if they could just remove it, but obviously they can't. So the Gendarmerie end up stopping them and having to search their ship because again, they're suspicious. They're looking for Goku, but Goku's hiding and everything, right? While they're doing that, they want to take Pansy with them for interrogation purposes, but Pansy doesn't want to go. She ends up stunning them and the group end up having to defeat the Gendarmerie. After the battle, they end up seeing a Gendarmerie plane because their plane ended up getting destroyed, so they take that Gendarmerie plane and head towards the third Tamagami. But before leaving, Pansy realizes that they will still be able to track her due to her collar, but Shin is able to remove it with his magic since it's made out of Kachin, which is a metal that can only be attained on planet Kaishin, which is where the Glens used to live within the demon world. And yes, there are different planets and whatnot within the demon realm, and we'll get into that later and see a couple of different other examples of this. So after the collar is removed, Shin believes that Arensu was probably the one to make the collars when Deborah was Supreme Demon King. Pansy also asked Shin what his name was when he lived within the demon realm, and he says that his real name is Nahare. Shin more than likely comes from Kaioshin, so that's what he started to go by once he became a Kaioshin, obviously. So again, the group arrives at the third Tamagami and Goku prepares to fight him, and I have to say, this fight between Goku and the third Tamagami is some of the best choreographed, best animated footage of Dragon Ball that we have ever gotten. I'm telling you, it is so beautiful. And I'll say it before we even get to it later in this episode. Goku fighting the third Tamagami is way better than Vegeta fighting the second Tamagami. Vegeta has his one little moment, which the moment's not necessarily little, it's a pretty big moment. But as far as the spectacle of the entire fight, as far as choreography, animation, and whatnot, Goku versus the third Tamagami is definitely an objectively better fight. Because there were so many different instances where they were doing so many things that we just don't normally get to see within Dragon Ball, or at the very least we haven't seen in some time. And again, this episode was so beautifully animated. I loved it so much. Words simply can't express how beautiful this episode was. And I can't wait to continue to see where they're going to go with the animation, the choreography, and everything within Dragon Ball Daima, especially once we get into the later fights when things get really serious. So after Goku defeats the third Tamagami, the Tamagami wants to do a final test to give Goku and the group the Dragon Ball. And this test is essentially a simple cup test where they put the Dragon Ball under one of the cups and the Tamagami is just sitting there shuffling around the 3 cups, and Goku has to sit there and pick which one the Dragon Ball is under. Now obviously he's moving very fast, nobody else can keep up, but Goku was able to keep up, and the Dragon Ball was actually moved over to this older man's head, or it's floating above his head. So Goku was the only one to see that, and they obtained the Dragon Ball. They passed the test, and again, not only was this cool, but it was very cute, especially the way the Tamagami appreciated and admired Goku. Because you can see as the group is leaving, Tamagami is actually trying to do a Kamehameha himself, and it's so cute. So again, the group then heads off to the second Demon Realm, and then we also see Glorio discussing with Arensu, keeping her up to date on current events. So we then kind of segue to Goma and Getsu, and they're kind of looking over everything on their big screen or whatever, and they're actually looking at the events of the Buu Saga, specifically the later portion of the fight where Majin Vegeta sacrifices himself against Fat Buu. You see all the pieces of Buu kind of trying to come back together, but what they zoom in on is the fact that Arensu was there actually collecting samples of Majin Buu. And it's at that point we kind of cut over to Arensu at this place. She's actually there speaking with Marba, who is currently making Arensu another Majin, and we come to find out that she is the creator of Majin Buu. She sits there and tries to deny it, but Arensu knows that she's the creator, and the fact that Bibbidi's father simply came to her and requested that she made Majin Buu, because Bibbidi did not have the abilities to sit there and create something like that. And then Marba also sits there and says that Majin Buu was just a fluke and he was incredibly powerful but couldn't be controlled and went on a rampage. They're hoping that this next Buu isn't going to go crazy like that. But while the new Majin is being made, we find out Arensu's main goal is to become the next Supreme Demon King, and if all else fails, she'll just use the Dragon Ball. So that's the reason why she's having Glorio have Goku collect all the Dragon Balls. We also see that Marba asks Arensu to plant the Cyberman seed into the pot only about 5 centimeters down so that it increases the amount of Majin Buu's essence, because they are still using Majin Buu's DNA or material or whatever. And once they do that, they water the seed and Majin Ku is born. Yes, the next Majin, and he is instructed to go obtain the Dragon Ball. And let me tell you, this fight with Majin Ku versus the first Tamagami is something, because we see that Majin Ku, yes, you could probably say he's a little bit powerful, but no, it's not there. Realistically, most of the fight, Majin Ku is getting toyed with and played with, because Ku simply just does these random kind of funny, weird dance moves the entire time, and obviously none of that stuff is working. He's way too silly to be a real fighter, and we see that especially when he ends up quitting. So yes, this fight was very, very short. So while that fight is going on, Goma actually sends a Generator after Goku's group, and obviously this doesn't work again. Goku ends up defeating them. He also defeats a creature known as a Kraken, but after that they end up finding the planet that the Namekians lived on when they lived in the demon realm, so they head towards that planet. And then obviously once they land, Goku senses Vegeta's key, so he goes and grabs Vegeta and brings them to the old Namekian planet. And like I said before, there are planets within the demon realm or world. It's just like the outside world seemingly. There are separate planets within each. So while on old Namek, if you will, Shin states that since this planet looks like Namek, the one that Frieza blew up, and other planets that the Namekians live on, they must take the trees with them to rebuild, which is why any planet the Namekians live on, it kind of always looks the same. One of the most important things during this particular episode, while they were on Namek, was the fact that Shin actually explains the history of the 12 universes, or at the very least a very brief version or synopsis of it, and how Rimus created them. Yes, Rimus is the creation god of the universe, and he's the highest authority, seemingly above Zeno. I've speculated for quite some time that Zeno is essentially the god of destruction for the 12 universes, and the Grand Priest is essentially his angel, just like Whis is the angel to Beers, the god of destruction of Universe 7. So again, Rimus is the creation god, And we also learned that the original Supreme Demon King actually tasked Rimus to create the 12 universes, and then Rimus actually tasked the Glens to become Supreme Kais. So that's part of the reason why they left the demon world. Not the exact reason, but part of the reason. So after all of that, the group's getting ready to leave to head towards the second Tamagami, but Neva appears. Piccolo actually ends up recognizing Neva, and Neva says that Piccolo kind of reminds him of Karatz, which Piccolo tells him that was his father. So crazy enough, Piccolo remembers his father, but he doesn't remember the Namekian language, which we end up seeing when they ask him, can he also speak the Namekian language? It's a little crazy if you can remember all of this, but you can't remember that, and you say that you've been on Earth too long, but you know, tomato, tomato. After all that, Neva tells them about helping Goma. He says that he didn't expect for them to gather the demon realm with Dragon Balls, and he was playing the fool the whole time, essentially. So at that point, Pansy says that since Neva created the Tamagamis, that he should be strong enough to take down the Supreme Demon King, but Neva tells them that Namek should never use their power for conflict. And the funny thing is, everyone looked at Piccolo, probably because of the whole Demon King Piccolo incident and all the fighting that he's done, or since he's joined the Z Fighters. So it's at that point the group then head to the second Tamagami, and never actually decides to tag along with them. Since, like I said, nobody can actually speak the Namekian language, and just like Planet Namek's Dragon Balls with Porunga, you have to actually be able to speak Namekian to summon the dragon and actually make the wish. So then we go back to Arenzu, and she's actually headed back to Marba's place to get her to actually make another Majin, since Ku was, at least according to her, a failure. This time Marba tells Arenzu to bury the Cyberman seed 10 centimeters, but Arenzu states that since this is their last seed, that she'll go 20 centimeters. And I actually forgot to mention this earlier about the whole Cyberman thing. I thought the Cyberman seeds was actually pretty cool, and it actually gives us some understanding of how the Saiyans actually came to actually obtain the Cyberman seeds in general, because Marba would go to the outside world and sell the Cyberman seeds to various peoples. So because Arenzu said that she actually wanted to bury the Cyberman seed 20 centimeters, Marba is actually concerned that it will go berserk, but Arenzu states that she'll handle it, and she needs it to be strong enough to defeat a Tamagami, so her reign as the new Supreme Demon King will last. They plant the seed, and Majin Buu is born. And one of the first things that Buu does when he is born is ask for chocolate. So he really does have this part of Majin Buu within him. So to that point, we cut to Goku, Vegeta, and the rest of the group as they arrive at the second Tamagami, while Arenzu, Ku, and Buu arrive at the first Tamagami. So these next two fights, Vegeta versus the second Tamagami and Buu versus the first Tamagami, happen simultaneously. So Buu begins his fight with the first Tamagami, and he is performing way better than Ku. And when I say way better, I mean way better. Not only is he actually fighting, but he's being silly as well. So he's kind of got those same aspects Ku has, but he actually has the power to back it up. It's very, very similar to how Majin Buu fought, or Kid Buu, if you will. Very reminiscent. There were multiple instances where he's sitting there dancing, shaking his butt. We got a Majin twerking in Dragon Ball. Never thought I'd see this. But again, the Majin Buu fight is really dope because we don't get to see too many Majins fight, because obviously the only canon one that we've had was Majin Buu and Kid Buu and the rest of the other Boos. But while that fight is going on, Vegeta prepares for his fight with the Tamagami. And what's crazy is everybody was doubting Vegeta's strength in the beginning. Like, oh, he can't be as strong as Goku. There's no way that he's about to perform so well. So Vegeta ends up showing them better than he can tell them, because he's performing very, very well during this fight, at the very least in the beginning. Because there are some mishaps with a Kraken that pops up and a couple of other things, but again, all in all, Vegeta definitely performed well. And as I said earlier, this entire fight with Vegeta versus the second Tamagami, as far as choreography, was not on the same level as Goku versus the third Tamagami. So again, the Goku fight is better. Like I said, it's just objectively the truth. Like, I genuinely don't understand how we can compare them, but it gets to a point to where Neva actually gives the Tamagami a boost in power, and retrospectively it gives the other Tamagami that Buu is fighting more power as well, because you can kind of tell because they have a different color gradient over them. But when it happens for the Tamagami that Vegeta's fighting, he kind of gets bodied a little bit, and then he gets knocked into the water. But once he gets knocked into the water, he begins to power up, and he transforms into Super Saiyan 3. Again, this was Vegeta's moment. I will give it to him. I will give him all the roses in the world. This moment was definitely cool. The highlight of the episode, honestly. And I love the fact that they actually decided to use the original design, or portion of the original design, for Super Saiyan 3 without the tail, obviously. I love that fact. And it actually shows how everybody Super Saiyan 3 is not going to look the same. And I love that fact. But once Vegeta turns Super Saiyan 3, at that point, it's pretty much a wrap, because he's sitting there folding his arms just like Vegeta. And yes, Vegeta gets his whole folded arms gimmick from Vegeta, but he bodies that Tamagami. There's a point where he simply is just blocking the hits with one finger. He splits the ocean in half. And then by the end of the fight, he sits there and just stops the Tamagami on his back, because he sat there and sent him flying with a Gala gun. And he just puts his hand on the Tamagami's back. He's like, "You're done, bro. You're done. It's a wrap. It's over." But Vegeta's entire fight was amazing. And again, Buu's fight was pretty good too, because Buu had a powered up Tamagami as well, and he performed very, very good. Again, more silliness, but silliness and strength to back it up. That was Buu's thing instead of Ku. But at the end, both of them still had a test just like Goku did. So Vegeta's test was more of like a old school arithmetic problem, if you will. You know how you were back in school in like first first or second grade and you came home with homework and it's like, Johnny has 1 apple, and then he gives his brother the other apple. How many apples does Johnny have left? It was one of those type of questions, right? And Vegeta ends up answering it, not even by the math. His answer, because he kind of tries to give a common sense answer, and honestly it works, but it only works because he remembered that there were snakes on planet Vegeta. That's the only reason. If not for that, he would have gotten this wrong more than likely, because even Bulma said that Vegeta is not good with these problems. And once that group attains the Dragon Ball, they're good to go. They're getting ready to head towards the next Tamagami, or at the very least they think they're heading towards the next Tamagami, but obviously Do, Rensu, and Ku already have that Dragon Ball. And with Dude's little test, that's literally an arithmetic problem, because he sits there and is forced to add a bunch of random numbers that are just flashing there. And obviously nobody is prepared for that. Not even a Rensu can even do it. But surprisingly, Majin Ku is able to read and add all those numbers up. And he whispers the answer to Dude, and then Dude's able to get the Dragon Ball because of Majin Ku. So even though Majin Ku is just way too playful, he's very, very smart. So hopefully that comes into play at some point. But once both Dragon Balls are taken, we can clearly see that Goma is visibly shaken and upset, but he has something up his sleeve. So I am very excited to see what's going to happen in episode 13 and how everything's going to play out afterwards. So I'm so glad to be caught up. Let me know in the comments what you've enjoyed about these last few episodes. I know a lot of people are going to sit here and say, oh, I definitely enjoyed Vegeta getting Super Saiyan 3. He finally deserves it. We finally get to see him in that form. We don't have to sit here and say that Vegeta ended up having to skip this form anymore. I know that's going to be a lot of people's favorites. Again, my personal favorite moment and or episode was Goku fighting the third Tamagami. Like I said, the choreography, the animation was so beautiful. And don't get me wrong, the animation and choreography in Vegeta's fight was beautiful and great as well, but in my opinion, it peaked at the Super Saiyan 3 part. It's almost as if they saved all their money for that part. Not saying that the other parts were bad or anything, but it's like, yeah, let's just get this Super Saiyan 3 looking really, really, really good, which I understand. But like I said, let me know what your favorite part is down in the comment section below. And are you actually enjoying Dragon Ball Daima and what you look forward to in these next few episodes? Don't forget to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and then ring the bell to receive notifications so that we know every time I happen to upload a new video. And don't forget, y'all, I also stream on Twitch. I try and do it every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So that's twitch.tv/nerdstorm92. And then you can catch me and follow me on all my socials. I'm trying to post content every day, so definitely give me a follow on all those social media platforms. That's at nerdstorm92 on everything. And with that being said, I will catch y'all in the next one. Peace.